My name is Laila. I'm one of Youth for Ecocide Law's co-leads and your host today. I'd like to take some time to welcome some of the many diverse people from around the world that are tuning in today. I'd like to welcome people of all genders, people from all countries of the world, from mixed and multiple descents, Indigenous people and earth defenders. I'd like to acknowledge all the different languages that are spoken. Whatever your mother tongue is, we thank you for tuning in to this English-speaking webinar. I'd like to welcome all people who currently struggle with getting access to resources necessary for survival, as well as people who currently have more access to those resources. I'd like to welcome people with disabilities, visible or invisible, those that are gay, lesbian, bisexual, heterosexual, pansexual, queer, or others for whom none of these labels fit, people with different faith, religious traditions, faith practices, private practices that don't belong to tradition, agnostics, atheists, and seekers. I'd like to welcome all of your emotions that are tuning in with you today, whether that is joy, bliss, excitement, or anxiety, rage, grief, and disappointment. I like to welcome people who identify as activists and people who don't. Everyone is welcome, and we are honored that you are choosing to spend a part of your Saturday and Earth Day here with us. As we know, the Earth is facing an ecological crisis. Human activities have caused extensive damage to the environment, leading to climate change, biodiversity loss, and other forms of environmental degradation. For years, the science has been clear. And to protect the planet, we must halt our greenhouse gas emissions, stop the mass destruction of ecosystems, and redefine a more respectful and loving relationship with our planet and each other. Yet, the urgency and solutions needed to address the ongoing biodiversity and climate crisis are still not being taken up to the extent that we need them. World leaders are failing to act, and many young people are growing frustrated about this inaction and anxious about the lack of accountability when our decision makers refuse to implement the necessary and systemic changes. So that's why in this context, the concept of Ecocide Law has emerged as a potential solution. Youth for Ecocide Law is a global network of young people committed to promoting and advocating for Ecocide Law to finally make the destruction of our home and our future on planet Earth illegal. So this webinar is an opportunity for everyone to learn about Ecocide Law, our growing youth movement, and how the push to criminalize ecocide can support many other youth-driven environmental justice campaigns. We'll be engaging with various perspectives on ecocides from around the globe and potential solutions. And that leads me to introduce our first speaker, Dalia, who will give an introduction to Stop Ecocide and how the youth movement for Ecocide Law was formed. Dalia is a young lawyer from Venezuela, passionate about defending human rights, protecting gender equality and peace building. Dalia is an environmentalist, a university professor, and founder of the NGO Juventud Unida en Acción, apologies for my pronunciation, an institution which is developing education and training programs to empower young people as agents of change in their community, empower women, promote the culture of peace building, and develop social programs in vulnerable communities with a framework of the 2030 Agenda. Dalia, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Leah, for that amazing presentation. So I'm going to share with you a few words about the history of the Stop Ecocide International. But first, the history, what is doing Stop Ecocide International and what is Youth for Ecocide Law. But first of all, it's necessary to understand what is ecocide. So ecocide, basically, it's like a word to describe what is happening to our planet. The mass damage and destruction of the natural living world. It literally means killing one's home or only home, killing this world. And right now, in most of the world, no one is held any kind of responsible for that damage. Therefore, we think that it's time to change the rules. It's time to protect our home. Therefore, we are working with a growing global network of lawyers, diplomats, and across the world with civil society towards making ecocide an international crime. Now, about the history of Stop Ecocide International. Stop Ecocide International was co-founded in 2017 by Polly Higgins and the current executive director, Jojo Mehta. Stop Ecocide International is the driving force behind the growing global movement to make ecocide an international crime. The core work of Stop Ecocide is activating the developing global cross-sector support for this. We collaborate with diplomats, politicals, lawyers, corporate leaders, NGOs, indigenous communities, and faith groups, influencers, academical experts, grassroots, campaigns, and individuals to this end. Positioned at the meeting point of legal developments, political traction, and public narrative, we are the uniquely placed to support and amplify this global conversation. The core international team of Stop Ecocide International is located in many parts of the world and managed from the United Kingdom by Stop Ecocide International. Also, it's necessary to highlight that the charitable entity of Stop Ecocide Foundation was created in November of 2019 in Netherlands to support the growing movement, and it's like the main fundraising and commissioning vehicle for the work of Stop Ecocide International. So, Stop Ecocide International, it's like the driving force behind the growing global movement to make ecocide an international crime. It's a network with more than 45 teams and different associated groups. And right now we have different groups in Australia, Belgium, Brazil, Canada, Chile, Croatia, Democratic Republic of Congo, Greece, Honduras, Ireland, Italy, Iran, Kenya, and around the world. There are over 50,000 endorsing signatories across civil society and faith groups, and over 21,000 subscribed members of hair protectors, and this is a growing number. So that is a little bit about the history of Stop Ecocide. But what we do? The core work is activating and developing global cross-sector support for an international crime of ecocide. With over 10 years of collective experience and history in this work, Stop Ecocide International has been collaborating with diplomats, politicals, lawyers, corporate leaders, NGOs, indigenous communities, and faith groups to promote and advocate for the recognition of the ecocide as international crime. The main goal is that the amending of the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court. This is the only global mechanism which directly accesses the existing criminal justice systems of 123 member states. So in general words, this is what we are trying to do. We really think that it's necessary to have ecocide as an international crime. And the best alternative and the best option is to include the international crime of ecocide into the Rome Statute. Now, I'm going to share with you really quickly a video from Jojo, the executive director. Okay.
Stop Ecocide is a campaign about changing international law and ultimately changing history. Destroying the planet is currently permitted. That is how ecosystems are being destroyed every day by dangerous industrial activity, exacerbating climate emergency and destroying our soils, our forests, our rivers, the land and the earth we love. This is ecocide, and we believe it should be an international crime alongside war crimes, genocide, and crimes against humanity. This is surprisingly achievable. At the International Criminal Court, any member state can table an amendment to add the crime of ecocide. And it doesn't have to be a big oil state, like, for example, the UK, where our campaign started. It could be, if we were being really revolutionary. But the people that have the real incentive to do this and to do it quickly are small islands who are already feeling the sharp end of climate change. They're already going underwater. We're working directly with those small Pacific islands to take forward this law. They have the legal ability already, but they don't have the expertise and the practical support, and that is what our campaign can give them. Usually it's corporations that fund laws. They have the money, they have the power and influence, they can take the right people to dinner, they can speak to all the politicians, they can lobby for the laws that they want that support their industry. This campaign does something very different. We're inviting you, the people, us, to fund a law that we want, to protect the earth that we love. We believe there's nothing more powerful that you can do with 2 minutes and a fiver. Join us and become an earth protector today.
And now I'm going to explain you in the next 1 or 2 minutes what is Youth for Ecocide Law. So it's clear that young generation are disproportionately affected by the mass destruction of this planet, with the loss of biodiversity, climate change, and all the different consequences of pollution. Therefore, during our lifetime, we will face the ever-worsening consequences of all the damage that we are seeing against the world and against environment. Therefore, Youth for Ecocide Law was founded in 2021 as a response to the growing frustration among global youth over the lack of actions to address those crises. We call for a clear legal guardrails to hold political and corporate decision makers accountable when they cause severe and widespread or long-term harm to our futures. The Youth for Ecocide Law Network was officially founded around the Stockholm +15 International Meeting, where the global youth position paper for Stockholm +50 includes a call to recognize large-scale environmental destruction, ecocide, as a punishable crime in domestic laws and in the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court. And I have to highlight that I was part of this position paper, and was a long process that takes at least 6 months of consultation with young people around over the world. I can say that more than 3,000 young people participated in those consultations. And we call for this. We call for the recognition of the ecocide as a crime against the humanity. Since then, Youth for Ecocide Law has grown exponentially. We represent the youth constituency between the intergenerational global movement to criminalize ecocide. Our ambition are the empowered youth voices in the environmental movement to build bridges between civil society, young people, the UN policy processes, corporate decision-making, and government policies, and to promote the intergenerational respect. Our network have different meetings monthly to discuss about ecocide law, capacity building, and organize campaigns and mobilization to advocate for the recognition of ecocide law. Now we are more than 100 young people around the world from all the continents of this world. We have a core team that is doing a lot of different amazing activities like this webinar, and we kindly invite you to join in this movement. Thank you.
Thank you, Dalia. So on the back of that, I would like to introduce Oscar now. Oscar works on projects facilitating youth peer education to empower young people to create change. He is a co-founder at Youthtopia and represents young people at conferences and in board meetings for companies and NGOs around the world. Youthtopia is a collective of youth from all over the world who inspire and support each other's journeys as change makers, activists, leaders, and movement builders. With headquarters in Bali, Youthtopia creates and offers free changemaker training and courses to empower young people to create change around the world. We've collaborated with Youthtopia before and host an event at COP27, so very excited to have you here today, Oscar. And could you tell us a little bit more about how Youthtopia works of mobilizing youth voices relates to and can be supported by Ecocide Law?
Hi there, Leah, and everyone listening. Thank you so much for that kind introduction. As said, I'm Oscar. I'm still a student, but I've been working with NGOs for a few years. The only thing that I would add about that thorough introduction about Youthtopia is that sort of the precursor to that was created by Melati Wiesen, and that was an organization called Bye Bye Plastic Bags, which was focused about mitigating plastic pollution in Bali, specifically obviously caused by plastic bags. And so that's important in one of the aspects of ecocide in Southeast Asia generally, which I've been asked to touch on briefly. The most prevalent and pressing forms of ecocide throughout Southeast Asia are generally considered to be deforestation and then plastic pollution, which I'll talk about in a bit more detail later. But one of the major contributors to deforestation is the conversion of tropical forests into plantations for palm oil, a product I'm sure everybody's already heard about, but it's in many of the goods that we use on a daily basis. But because such forests, because they're such a major carbon sink and that they're a habitat for a really wide range of species, it's a really worrying and a wide-scale destruction of biodiversity. And relating that specifically to the law around ecocide, many Southeast Asian countries, it's a difficult problem to combat because of things like resource availability. So how is it financially viable to implement laws, but more than implementation, also to actually enforce them? But then there's also aspects of corruption or vested interests within parts of the government. And so in regards to deforestation, there are independent reports that show that officials in places like Indonesia, Cambodia, Malaysia, and the Philippines, they actually profit from this destruction as well. And so obviously things like that are a massive barrier to begin to attempt to combat that problem in an effective way. And then the other major form of ecocide, and one that Youthtopia is more closely connected to through Bye Bye Plastic Bags, is plastic pollution. It's problematic in all parts of Southeast Asia to varying extents, but in Indonesia specifically, which is sadly the second largest plastic polluter worldwide, I think it's every 20 seconds, around 10 tons of plastic are dumped into waters around Indonesia. And the effect that we've seen of this on marine animals and the marine environment is really devastating. And there's some reports showing that animals like rays and sharks sometimes consume, when they're feeding, at least up to 100-something pieces of plastic per hour. And then the result of that is some really sad stories, like in South Sulawesi in 2019, a beach sperm whale that was found to have over 1,000 pieces of plastic, totaling a weight of about 6 kilos in its stomach. So, I think it's quite indisputable that something has to be done about this. And ecocide law, I think, is a very good option for that. But sadly, at the moment, ecocide itself isn't a very widely known term in Southeast Asia. And it's one that's really only legally been recognized in Vietnam. But even there's no sort of legal mechanisms to actually regulate the criminal liability for it. Or for the criminal liability for ecocide once it's actually been committed. In Indonesia specifically, there's no legal recognition for this, but it's something that's really important to have included in our laws, because we do want governments to have a legal obligation to prevent ecocide and bring the perpetrators of it to justice. Now, specifically in terms of youth, we believe at Youthtopia strongly that mobilizing youth voices and educating both young and old people about these issues is a highly effective way to bring about this positive change. One example, which is a bit closer to Youthtopia, specifically from Melati, is that after almost a decade of hard work from Melati, who founded Bye Bye Plastic Bags, the whole team there, but then also all the other organizations who've been working on this issue, finally single-use plastics were banned in Bali starting at the end of this year, I think, and throughout Indonesia in 2030. And such progress and laws like that, which provide a basis for ecocide law and ecocide criminal justice sort of deciding what's allowed and what's not, they're only possible with widespread awareness on these issues and young people and old people showing policymakers that these issues are important to us. And that's only possible through educating people, mobilizing people, and finding ways to start campaigns, getting people's interest in this started. And that's really what a lot of our work focuses on both educating about the issues themselves, but then also education on all of the soft skills surrounding it. And so, yeah, that was I hope I didn't go too much over time. That was a very brief overview of the current sort of status in Southeast Asia and Indonesia and the work we do. And yeah, if you're watching and you'd like to find out more, you can go to Youthtopia Education, because we offer those classes completely for free. And perhaps you can pick up some new skills if you're just watching and interested in becoming a change maker. But we believe a lot of it can start on a grassroots level, and that awareness is vital to sum it up.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Oscar. I think that's a really good introduction to show like some of the on the ground, the ecocides that we see happening that currently aren't captured by legal systems, whether that's locally, regionally, or internationally. And yeah, the increased need that we have for laws to protect and safeguard our oceans and our earth. So thank you so much for speaking about that today and for all you and Youthtopia do.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Moving on, I'd like to introduce Debbie as our next speaker. Debbie is a member of the Youth for Ecocide Law core mobilizing team, helping lead work on strategy and policy for 2023. She's currently based in Nairobi, Kenya, and Debbie is a tree planter and has so far planted trees in 6 of the 7 continents. Thus, we welcome her to speak on the perspective of ecocides in Kenya and the urgency for solutions to halt deforestation. Very warm welcome to you, Debbie. I've heard you've already planted some trees today on Earth Day, which is great to hear, and look forward to hearing from you.
All right, thank you for introducing me. My name is Debbie, and yes, I'm in Nairobi currently. It's rainy this Earth Day, which is quite good for tree planting. I am a tree planter and a tree mom. So if you would like to plant trees as well, you can hit me up. Now into the topic of ecocide in Kenya. It's kind of a vague conversation, and I've heard this with my friend from the Netherlands. There's a quite huge difference in what ecocide is here and what we're campaigning to do. Kenya was actually among the first countries to sign the Ecocide Law bill a few years ago, but here's the catch. So we have such strong policies when it comes to environmental crimes and injustices, but on the ground, it's quite not followed at all. And this is something else we found out is in our constitution, which is quite revolutionary in giving the people a lot of power. And there's a clause in the preamble that says, be respectful of the environment, which is our heritage, and determined to sustain it for the benefit of future generations. So it's, if I can say, our laws and policies are up here, but on the ground, it's quite different. For example, a few weeks ago, we got a memo that one of the forests within the city, we have lots of forests within the city and a national park as well. So one of the forests is being under siege by the government trying to build a sewer line in between it. So we were signing petitions and chanting on the streets for them not to do that, but it is wrong for them to touch forests because we know those are indigenous trees and they can't be replaced easily. Those are 100 years of trees grown there. So why would you not pass the sewer line over the road or somewhere else just inside the forest? So kind of following the law is left to the people on the ground, and the people on the ground depend whether you have money, whether you have power. And these are conversations that we need to speak out blankly, because if we keep on sugarcoating this, the forests and Ecocide Act will continue raining. So we have spoken to the Minister for Environment concerning this, but no action is being taken as much. So we're taking to the streets and we want to fight for this right of the sewer liner to pass between the forest by force at this point. So I think we need to have honest conversations in Kenya in regard to where the law meets action and its implementation, and how comes we have such great policies but no one is following them? Does it also mean it's a question of character? Is it a question of integrity with ourselves? And that's something that's a conversation we need to have honestly as a populace.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's a really great point to bring up in general, you know, around law. If we have laws, how can we best enforce them and protect them? Because yes, they are often also normative builders around what are the norms of what is allowed, but those need to be followed through. And that same goes with Ecocide Law. So thank you so much for giving that perspective to us from Kenya. And for also keeping it short and sweet. I know we have so many exciting voices today, so there's a lot to go through. Next, I would like to introduce Somabha. Somabha is the governance facilitator for the GAN Youth Hub within the Global Alliance for Rights of Nature. She works as a teaching assistant at the West Bengal National University for Jurisdictional Sciences in Kolkata, India. She's actively engaged in the rights of nature movement, and apart from spearheading activities of the Youth Hub, Somabha is presently pursuing research concerning glyphosate and the rights of nature in collaboration with Earthrife, United Kingdom, and other research projects on the Declaration of Rights in the Mediterranean Sea. Somabha has done a lot of amazing work, so thank you so much for being here today with us, and I welcome you to speak a little bit more about the rights of nature, the work of GAN Youth Hub, and how this movement of rights of nature connects with the global movement for Ecocide Law.
Thank you so much, Leah. I hope I'm perfectly audible. Yes. Right. First of all, happy Earth Day to all of you who have joined in, and it is indeed a great and a momentous occasion for us to be coming together, talk about Ecocide Law, and I'm here to kind of join the dots, as Leah said, on rights of nature and Ecocide, and where are the points where we come together, the similarities with which we are working. So rights of nature is, when I teach my students, I say that it is taking one step forward, a kind of a radical step from environmental law. It is not at all about the anthropocentric understanding of why we need to protect Mother Nature. And that's why we say that we are talking about protecting Mother Nature. And that is the reason that we tend to look at ecocentric principles. The ecocentrism is the idea behind the rights of nature movement, where several principles like personification, moral extensionism are used, which are very much inspired from the otherwise, we would say, human rights law movement. Now, when that happens, what we do is we try to attribute subjectivity to Mother Nature. Mother Nature is no longer a property or an object, which is what is helping us human beings to sustain. But it is a subject matter just like any one of us. It is a living entity. And that is why, since I hail from India, the principle of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, which means that the unity of all living creatures, is what we thoroughly believe in the rights of nature movement. And that is exactly from where the Ecocide movement stems and takes it forward. Because Ecocide movement, as Oscar was saying, and earlier Dalia also mentioned, that Ecocide is about looking at how we are killing Mother Nature as basic as it could be. So when can you really kill something? When you are associating life to it. Just as we say that genocide is killing of a particular gene or a species of human beings because of certain attributes. In that same manner, for ecocide, you're really killing Mother Nature. And so, as I said, that is how I look at it, that you can fathom the understanding of ecocide only when you look at Mother Nature as a subject matter of rights, and the rights are being taken away by the atrocities that the human beings are committing. So this is how rights of nature movement merges with the ecocide law movement, and that's why we are working at times parallelly and many times in unison with each other. And what the Garn Youth Hub does is to do this work, whereby we try and associate with different youth organizations across the world, because Global Alliance for Rights of Nature is an alliance. It is not just one body. It's an alliance where everyone comes together. And that's how we have had several conversations with Amelia from the Youth for Ecocide Law, and we work with several other youth organizations. So this is how we are trying to do the merges, and we are trying to continue the work, because at the end of the day, we are talking about existence of the living world with utmost dignity and in its purity and sanctity. So that is how rights of nature and ecocide law comes together. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for speaking to us today and really highlighting that connection, that more ecocentric approach to law between rights of nature, between ecocide law, and between really revolutionizing our legal systems in alignment with our morals as well that we need to adopt. Well, our next speaker is Yen. Yen is advancing youth empowerment as the director of Coalition Wild, a for youth, by youth global organization creating lasting youth leadership for the planet through capacity development, training, mentorship, and storytelling. Yen is driven to find ways for those groups that are often the hardest hit by the effects of the climate and biodiversity crisis, and to create change where and when it is most needed. She devotes most of her time to researching how youth can contribute to protecting the planet while empowering local communities. She holds a master's degree in sustainable development from the Katholieke Universiteit Leuven. Thank you so much for being with us today. Yen, I'd like to invite you to speak on biodiversity protection with the context of ecocide in the Philippines and the power of youth action. Can you explain how ecocide law supports other youth network to preserve biodiversity?
Thank you so much, Leah. And yeah, thank you very much to Stop Ecocide Foundation for the opportunity to speak about this urgent issue, and for considering as well how important it is to put a spotlight on my home country, which is like quite small and sometimes could be like, as such a small country that might what other think it's like a little bit insignificant, but yeah, having this as an opportunity it's really good. And as what Oscar mentioned earlier, ecocide is a relatively new concept in Southeast Asia and especially in the Philippines, but the country has endured this for so many decades, and this might not be a common knowledge amongst like our audience, but the Convention on Biological Diversity actually states that the Philippines is one of the 18 megabiodiverse countries in the world, and it accommodates around 70 to 80% of the world's plants and animal species. So we're quite lucky to house 2/3 of the Earth's biodiversity, but we are also very vulnerable to different disasters such as typhoons. On average, there are like 20 hard-hitting storms and typhoons that enters the Philippines. There are floodings, landslides, and earthquakes. So most of these disasters are now exacerbated by the climate crisis. So I would say that ecocide is definitely an urgent issue that must be addressed in the Philippines, because we should have this idea we should always know that all the activities that we do towards the environment has an impact. And the idea that a problem here is that there's an idea that industrialization equates to economical development to the point that up to the extent that we are exploiting our natural resources. And these are like the glaring evidences why Ecocide Law must be implemented in such areas. But the thing is, what I want to speak more about is that the issue of ecocide in the Philippines is deep-rooted in the system. There are so many layers that need to be addressed, such as environmental education at the start. Like, you know, there's this disconnect with our environment in general. And then the next part is the lack of accountability, which is also briefly explained by Oscar earlier, that there's this lack of accountability from the governments, there's corruption. And yeah, and these are like the prominent issues in the country, but I don't think it's even an isolated case. And the next part why Ecocide Law should be implemented and why it's very important is because it could have like this good impact for marginalized communities, including indigenous peoples and rural communities who are often relying on natural resources for their livelihoods and for subsistence. But at the same time, they're at the forefront of the climate crisis. So yes, it's a relatively new concept, but there's already a growing awareness of ecocide in the Philippines, and especially for young people. And I think I would like to stress here that there's an importance of implementing this law, not only because, you know, like that there's a recognition of large-scale environmental destruction as a punishable crime in domestic laws, and of course at the ICC, but there's this big possibility to hold governments, corporations, or any groups who are guilty of ecocides accountable. And, you know, we could not only raise awareness on how we could help the environment or contribute to achieving not only the Paris Agreement, but also the global biodiversity targets, but it sparks hope that we can actually do something towards the big, you know, the big corporations, the big governments who we think are not going to be accountable for the destruction of the environment. So this is, I think, one of the good things that the Ecocide Law could provide impact to the youth. And yeah, so I think that's those are the things that's the most important thing that the Ecocide Law can do to empower the youth to further contribute to the environmental movement.
Thank you so much. It's really great to hear so many perspectives, I feel, today, especially from Southeast Asia, and to hear from you today. So actually, we're already approaching our final speaker, which is great because I'm really hoping to give everyone else at the end a final statement to sort of give an action point to the audience of what we can do in Earth Day. But finally, before I do that, I'd like to introduce Laila. Laila is an innovative and solution-oriented sustainability and regenerative strategist. She's a core mobilizer with Youth for Ecocide Law and is dedicated to researching companies' alignment with the Stop Ecocide values, executing engagement strategy with key decision makers, and developing partnership agreements to drive change. Thank you so much for waiting to speak at the end as our final speaker on the role of youth movement for ecocide law within the context of business and the private sector. And with ecocide law, how can we connect with businesses in a productive way? And how can we change the paradigm within which businesses operate? Laila, the floor is yours.
Perfect. Well, thank you all so much for taking your time to be here. Today we come together to address the urgent challenges posed by climate change, biodiversity collapse, and environmental destruction driven by businesses prioritizing profits over the planet's well-being. I believe that by implementing an ecocide law and creating a regenerative economy, we can reshape what it means to be a business. Central to this transformation is the role of today's youth, who bring fresh perspectives and innovative ideas. And here are 6 that we can bring up to change the business mindset. First, we need to redefine what it means to be a business. Companies must prioritize community and environmental well-being. They should act as guardians of our planet, creating lasting positive impacts beyond generating profits. Youth can engage with business leaders, sharing their visions for companies, and use their purchasing power and social influence to support regenerative businesses. Next, we must reconsider the reason companies exist. If a company's product or service does not benefit the earth and its inhabitants, it's time for a change. Businesses entrenched in harmful industries can either pivot to create new opportunities that serve the world, its humans, and all living beings, otherwise should no longer be allowed to do business. Youth can advocate for the transformation or elimination of harmful companies, engaging in dialogue with industry representatives and policymakers, raising awareness through social media and other platforms. Third, we must promote more cooperative and employee-owned businesses. By embracing shared power, we create accountable and equitable systems. Success should be measured by the well-being of all stakeholders rather than profits alone. This approach fosters more regenerative and resilient communities where young people can lead by starting their own ventures or supporting existing cooperatives in their community. Fourth, we must empower local businesses. By adopting the think global and act local mantra, we can support local economies and reduce ecological footprints. We can create products and services that serve our regions, sourcing locally to reduce our ecological footprint and support these local economies. Youth can champion community business and lobby for policies that prioritize local companies. Fifth, we must move beyond sustainability and embrace regeneration. Young people can educate themselves and others on regenerative practices, becoming change agents in their schools, workplaces, and communities. And lastly, we need to unlock the potential with innovative work enablers. Youth can campaign for progressive work policies, such as the 4-day work week, and empower ways to leverage technology for good, drawing inspiration from movements like solar pump. So what does the role for youth movement for Ecocide Law play in business and private sector? We are the catalyst for change, connecting businesses with the new world we envision and reshaping the paradigms with which they operate. Together, I really believe that we can build a world where businesses thrive while nurturing planet and its people. In conclusion, by embracing these 6 principles then, so business for the force of good, transforming harmful industries, shared power, empower local businesses, regeneration, and innovative work enablers, we can create a world that is better for all beings. Our collective future really depends on our collective action. So I'm very happy to be joined with everyone else here to see what we can do to reshape the business world and for the betterment of the entire planet and everybody who inhabit it. Thank you.
Thank you, Laila. It's wonderful also to hear that perspective, because I think there's a lot that needs to change within business, within corporations that we see in the world, and that includes actually just having a stronger legal measures that can hold them accountable, which Ecocide Law, of course, is a solution to. And I hope this has also inspired everyone to consider all the different various perspectives that we've had today on Ecocide Law and the different solutions and issues that we're facing around the world. And also, yeah, the different youth initiatives that are happening. I would very much at the end now, I'd like to quickly invite all our remaining speakers that are still with us right now to share one final statement addressed to our listeners today on the topic of Ecocide Law, and an encouragement on this Earth Day to get involved in community action for our future and use that sense of active hope that I think we've also to some extent discussed today in terms of seeing what is wrong in the world, but letting that inspire us to create change. And with that, as firstly, I'd like to hand over the mic back to Dalia and ask her to share a final statement.
Yeah, thank you so much, Leah. It's amazing to be in here, hearing about all the amazing work that all of you are doing in your territories and in your countries. That's amazing. So my message or my reflection is that we really need to keep doing the best to advocate for the recognition of the ecocide as an international crime against humanity. I mean, have this recognition in the legal norms in our countries, it's okay. But we need to include this in the Rome Statute, because huge corporative, huge governments always try to avoid the responsibility. And we are not we as young people, humanity is destroying the only home we have. And this is totally unfair with the future generations. So let's keep working, let's keep advocating in your countries, in your localities, but also let's raise your voices in the global decision-making spaces and take every opportunity to speak loud about ecocide as an international crime against humanity. That's my final reflection.
Thank you so much. Next, I'd like to hand over to Oscar to give his final statement and encouragement to all our listeners.
Yeah, echoing what was said, very inspiring to hear from everyone and all the projects and things going on. And like I said, obviously it's an issue of great importance. And I would echo again what I said before. I think starting on an individual level, recognizing the importance, having conversations about ecocide specific to where you are, what that problem might be, whether that be deforestation or plastic pollution in Indonesia, or corporate finance like in Switzerland here, for example. Talking about it on a regional level with your network, spreading awareness on the issues. And I think the more people that learn about these things, the more people that become aware of their significance, the more politicians, policymakers, those in positions of power recognize that it's something that they have to address if they want to stay where they are. And, you know, it's a slow and gradual change, but I think the more people in the world that become, you know, I have values that are aligned with this, you know, if we get 60, 70, 80% of people more interested in the conservation of the planet and ecocide law as a whole, then in future generations as well, the protection of our planet will be guaranteed. Because at the end of the day, even, you know, for those who are younger, maybe listening, at the end of the day, in 10, 15 years down the line, we as a collective will be the ones making those decisions and being in those positions. So spreading the word, talking about it, and not giving up hope, I think, is another important one.
Thank you so much, Oscar, for that. Yeah, not giving up hope and inspiring action. That leads me to Debbie, and to give her final statement.
All right, there's one quote our former Chief Justice said, that rights sometimes are not given on a silver platter. They have to be advocated for and fought for. So by such webinars, such movements, we are fighting for our right. And this is something also I borrowed from Amelie, who's a co-lead as well. She said, ecocide law will protect hope. And that's exactly what this law will do for these generations and the coming months. So let's continue advocating and fighting for this law.
Wonderful, thank you. I love that. Ecocide will protect hope. Jen.
Yeah. So I guess if there's anything else that I would add, it's a little bit more like strategic about it. It's like to work within the sphere of influence, starting with yourself, which is like what they have mentioned earlier, to educate yourself, learn more about ecocide and the consequences for the planet, and how we can actually move forward with it, and how we can elevate this discussion in the international scene. And there are many resources available, like books, documentaries, and online articles. Like I was introduced to Stop Ecocide International when I was at Stockholm Plus 50, and it took me 2 minutes to learn more about it, and I got a pin, and it was fantastic. So it doesn't take a lot of time if you think about it. So just giving you that perspective, and of course, to help more about reducing your own impacts on the environment, conserving energy, using public transport, etc. And of course, if you move towards like a bigger and within their sphere of influence, what they've mentioned earlier is to advocate for change. You could probably write to your elected officials and to urge them to take action. You can also participate in different types of protests, sign all the petitions that you can see to raise awareness. And you know, that could help put pressure on the governments and all the other companies to act. And of course, you can support Stop Ecocide International and all the all the other environmental organizations that are working towards protecting the planets and environments and preventing ecocide in general. Either it could be by donating money, but of course, like volunteering your time works so much. And I think I would like to end this by stressing how important it is to vote for the candidates or any other politician that would actually serve the country well and also the environment well, who are the ones putting the environment in mind in their platforms. So I couldn't stress this enough because I come from a country where I think this has been forgotten for so long. So I wanted to just highlight that as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Yen. I really love that you gave a little practical approach to what we can do. And I think it's a really great reminder that, you know, environmental protection and advocacy doesn't have to be a very complicated and all-consuming task. There's something that we can all do in our daily lives on a day-to-day or just weekly basis to support the petitions and the movements that are going on. So finally, Laila, you have your last final statement for today.
Great, thank you. I'd like to just echo what Yen said, and my statement is I think that Ecocide Law brings back common sense. And when I'm thinking about businesses, sometimes we tend to think about these huge global corporations. But have you ever spoken to your favorite restaurant or the person that operates the market or your favorite movie theater? Do you know what they're doing? Do they know the harm that they're causing? Do they know that there is a better way? There are many organizations that are available today to support small businesses and making change. And once you kind of bring back and create that circle of influence, it's a lot easier for you to generate more change on a bigger spectrum. So I would really, really advocate for you all to go speak to your local businesses, to learn what they're doing, to share best practices, because I think that's the only way that we can actually understand that these are human beings who are trying to earn a living, to pay for their food, to pay for their kids' things, and that sometimes they don't really understand what's happening, and that collectively we can work together to use Ecocide Law to make sure that those that are aware of what they're doing are that there is a legal framework that we can put together for that not to continue. So thank you so much for everyone for being here, and echoing Yen again, please vote, vote, vote.
Wow, I am blown away by all our amazing speakers today, and I'm sure if everyone else is tuning in today as listeners is as well. I'm sure, like, I almost wish I could have a one-on-one conversation to dive more in depth with all of the things that all of you have mentioned and brought up and encouraged us with. And yes, I think there's so much for us to do, but at the same time, I hope that doesn't discourage action, but rather really inspires us to go into the calling or the route that we as individuals feel we have the most influence. You know, if you are an artist, there's a way for you to get involved. If you are working within business, as we've heard, there's ways for you to get involved. If you're a student, there's multiple ways that I would only encourage you to seek. That's been one of the core things for me is when I, you know, as a student, to just get involved in as many things as you can when you have the time to do so and to move change, because I think this world is yearning for this active youth movement, and I think we bring a lot of power and energy to the table, and we need these voices to be accelerated and like just heard. And I really wish everyone a lot of strength in this journey, because it is tiring, but I hope it's also inspired you to join community. And on that point, Amelie's posted in the chat some links to join Youth for Ecocide Law, whether that's the WhatsApp group or the mailing list, or to just follow us on our social media, stay engaged and support Youth for Ecocide Law, support the Stop Ecocide movement, but also in general, the different coalitions and youth collectives that we've heard today, such as Utopia, Collision Wild, and Ghan Youth Hub. Some of just an example of the many amazing things that are happening. We're all working together to create a better future. And I think in that, there is an active sense of hope because we are creating it. So finally, I think this webinar cannot end without me saying a big thank you to everyone who's tuned in, and especially to Stop Ecocide International for supporting us, and to Amelie for organizing and putting it all together to get us seated around our tables virtually today. It's been incredible to be here with all of you today. So thank you so much, Amelie, and Stop Ecocide International, to all our amazing speakers, to all our listeners. It's been a privilege to be here with you today, and all the best, and hope you have a good rest of your Earth Day.